This video explains how to install the water well automatic waterer from Tru-Test. Before installation, it's important to understand your local plumbing and electrical codes and that you follow all regulations and safety standards. Step 1. Before you begin, please turn off the water supply and read through the user guide to get a better understanding of how the water well is designed and how it works. Step 2. The first step is preparing the site and concrete slab. We recommend a concrete depth of 4 to 6 inches and a 24-inch apron around all 4 sides of the water well. This allows a good surface area for your livestock to get their front legs on when drinking water. It also prevents livestock from breaking up the dirt around the base of the waterer, keeping a tight seal at all times. Step 3. The vertical water supply line will come up from below the ground and connect to the water well valve. To get a better idea of where that connection is made, turn the water well up on its side and you will see the circular opening on the bottom of the tank. This is where the supply line will feed through and connect to the valve. You can see that the opening is slightly off-center from the bottom of the waterer. This is important to know when positioning the supply line within your concrete slab. Step 4. Before pouring the concrete slab, we need to run the water supply lines. Run your horizontal supply line at least 1 foot below the frost line. We suggest installing a shutoff valve somewhere on the main line. Please note, if your water pressure is above 75 psi, you must install a pressure reducer to allow optimal valve performance. Next, connect your vertical supply line. This should be 3/4 inches in diameter. Run the vertical supply line about 10 inches above the ground. We will cut it to a precise length in a later step. Step 5. Next, install the thermal earth tube around the vertical water supply line. The thermal earth tube should be at least 1 foot below the frost line. If you are in a colder climate where the frost line is deeper, you can stack additional thermal earth tubes on top of one another. Be sure the vertical supply line is in the center of the thermal earth tube. Step 6. It's now time to pour the concrete slab. Please be sure the top of the thermal earth tube sets flush with the top of the concrete slab. Do not pour concrete inside the thermal earth tube. The thermal earth tube allows the warm ground temperature from below the frost line to rise and insulate the supply line. If you fill the thermal earth tube with concrete or dirt, it prevents the warm air from rising. Step 7. Once the concrete is cured, it's time to cut the vertical water supply line to the proper length. The length will vary based on the water well model. It's important to know which water well you have, so you can cut the vertical supply line to the proper length. For this step, you'll need a fitting with a 3/4 inch male end. For the water well tube, when you connect the 3/4 inch male fitting to the end of the vertical supply line, the line should be about 3/4 inches to 1 inch below the top of the concrete. For the water well 4, when you connect the 3/4 inch male fitting to the end of the vertical supply line, the line should be about 2 inches above the top of the concrete. Step 8. After you cut the vertical supply line to the correct length, permanently attach the 3/4 inch male fitting to the supply line. Next, insert 1 black seal into the open end of the braided steel flex line. Then connect that end to the vertical supply line and tighten. Step 9. Turn the water on to flush the line of dirt and debris, and also to check for leaks at the connection. Then, turn the water off. Next, take the foam pipe insulation and slide it over the braided steel flex line and vertical water supply line. Step 10. It's now time to apply the foam tape seals. Turn the water well up on its side. Foam tape number 1 should be applied around the inner circle. This is where the thermal earth tube will be positioned. Foam tape number 2 should be applied in the channel around the outside perimeter. Foam tape number 3 has been pre-installed to the underside of the main lid at the factory. Foam tape number 4 should be applied to the underside of the reservoir lid. Step 11. Remove the valve mounting plate. Then carefully lift the water well and place it over the 3/4 inch flex line so that the flex line comes up through the opening. The end of the flex line should be 2 to 3 inches above the opening. This allows room to make connection to the valve. The excess line will be pushed back down into the base at a later step. Step 12. Insert a black seal into the open end of the 3/4 inch flex line. Connect the flex line to the valve mount plate assembly and tighten. Turn on the main water supply line. Open the shutoff valve to check for leaks, and then close the shutoff valve. Carefully push the excess flex line back down into the base. Be sure the O-ring is positioned in the channel under the valve mount plate assembly. Reattach the valve mount plate assembly to the base with the supplied hardware. Next, open the shutoff valve. Step 13. Check that both drain plugs are screwed in tightly. Turn on the water to fill the waterer. Put the flotation balls in the waterer, attach the top lid, and tighten with the attached hardware. Drill a 1/2-inch anchor hole in the concrete inside the V molded opening on each corner of the waterer. Insert an anchor bolt into each hole. Place the washer over the anchor bolt, then apply the nut. Tighten the nut and repeat on all 4 corners so that the water well is securely mounted. We recommend caulking the perimeter of the tank to protect against cold air. Step 14. Adjust the water level by sliding the float up or down the float arm, using the top and bottom plastic spacer to set the float in place. Once the water level is set, attach the reservoir lid and tighten the hardware. Step 15. When training cattle, adjust the float to the lowest setting and gradually increase the water level as cattle get more accustomed to drinking from it. In the warm months, keep the water level high to help keep the water cooler and to protect against algae and mosquitoes. In the winter months, check that the flotation balls are not tight up against the lid, as this may cause them to freeze shut. Adjust the water level so there is a small gap between the flotation balls and the lid. For more information, please visit our website at Tru-Test.com.